All right, Chance, let's get right to it. One of the typical talking points for a road trip like this for the Reds is, ooh, going out west is tough. Ooh, 3 time zones away. Ooh, I hope they adjust to that okay and can play all right. And I don't know about you, but I get sick of hearing that only slightly less than I get sick of people talking about the elevation when you play in Denver. Taking a chartered flight to California and playing baseball the next day is not that taxing. However, I thought there was an actual real threat that the Reds might be emotionally jet lagged or emotionally drained after that crazy series against Milwaukee at Great American Ballpark. I mean, that was real. And yet the Reds were able to shake that off along with the imaginary time zone virus or whatever that is. And they won a series against the Angels and got as close as they've been to an actual wild card spot. Okay, so since you were at your summer home in the Hamptons for the last show, we need to, and I'll just call this check-in with Chaz. We need to check in with Chaz right away. So complete this sentence for me. Chaz, the Cincinnati Reds on August 21st are blank.
Believing, I would say, would be the right word. You saw it pop up in at different stages of the season. I think you saw it pop up after the Padres series. You saw it pop up after the Mets series. And what was so interesting to me was obviously some heartbreakers against Milwaukee. But I think the way that they responded with the Angels series, also adding on the way they won Sunday, helped ditch some of that stench pretty quickly. And pretty quickly, it felt like they ended up in a spot, even though they took 2 against a bad team, it ended up in a spot where they felt ultimately better themselves at the end of the week than they did when it started, even accounting for kind of those 2 heartbreakers against Milwaukee. And they're in a good spot right now. And I'm sure I'll say this again. This is fun. They're playing fun ball. They're playing interesting teams. Guys are rising and falling. It's a good stretch.
It is a good stretch. And listen, 6 weeks left, give or take, in the race. And the Reds play more road games than home games. And more than half of those roadies are in the state of California. They're going to have to earn it. And we'll get deeper into that. But also just don't talk to me about time zones and those types of things. You were in the Hamptons, right?
I was at multiple of my beach. I have multiple beach houses in the Hamptons and what is it? The not the Picayunes, the newspaper, and the Peonies or something like that. That's where rich people vacation. I'll keep trying to come up with those names of all those houses that I definitely have.
That's okay. We missed you. We should take this opportunity, though, to shout out the godfather of the Growler. Paul Daner Jr. filled in admirably on the show last week, but we missed you, Chaz. This is your space, man.
It was the Drake and Josh convention. I listened, or the country music tour that you said I was on. I'm trying to remember what those other categories were, but I maybe all I'll say is what Terry Francona said about when Chase Burns was going to pitch out of the bullpen on last Wednesday. I can neither confirm nor deny. But unlike Chase Burns, I did not suffer a flexor strain while warming up for said event.
Okay, that gets us going. Welcome to Power Stacks, proud members of the Growler Podcast Network. Coming up on the show, no pain, no gain, ? The Reds regular testing his pain tolerance down the stretch. Also, reach for the stars. Can the Reds ride some star power in big games against big-name teams? And 2 words that have now officially entered the conversation for the Reds bullpen, specifically the back of the Reds bullpen. Those 2 words, Chaz, load management down the stretch. We'll dive into that. But first, in the leadoff spot today, we'll start with that thing about no pain, no gain. The injury to Tyler Stephenson. This was a little bit of a surprise because for several days, all the signs were positive from Steve-O, from Terry Francona. It was all, there's no IL stint necessary here. He's trending in the right direction. He just needs another day. And I believe it because I watched him take batting practice. I watched him get ready for games. And right up until the Reds made the move to put him on the injured list, Terry Francona said, look, he was killing it in batting practice. I talked to Tyler Stephenson. He said, look, I was driving the ball that day and I felt just fine. I played catch and I felt just fine. But he was scheduled to catch Nick Lodolo's side session as Lodolo works his way back too. And he said there was just one pitch when he knew that the thumb flared back up and he knew it wasn't right and he knew he probably couldn't, start and catch an entire game, much less do it on consecutive days. And so that was the problem. That put him on the injured list and kind of surprised everyone. And now it's kind of a wait and see. So I want to get your take on where the Reds are with this right now. But first, let's go ahead and get this out of the way and get right to Tyler Stephenson, his thoughts on the injury and where he is now.
Yeah, it is a pain tolerance thing. And like hitting yesterday's has felt fine. And I didn't really have any issues with hitting. And then the big test, given the position where I'm at, catching 150 plus baseballs a game. They can take one, and that's what happened yesterday. Just one pitch, kind of tried to pick a ball and kind of blew back up. So, hopefully give it some time while I can right now, and then keep doing treatment, and then I don't know, a week or two, kind of see where we're at and see where the pain's at.
But until that one pitch, you were optimistic that you were kind of trending in the right direction.
For sure, yeah. Like these past 3 days have been good, and the big test was going to be catching, and I played catch like lightly, and I was like, okay, that was fine. Like I said, hitting actually felt good, was able to drive the ball and stuff. So, just one pitch, and it kind of blew back up. So, we'll see how after Friday goes.
All right, so Friday that he references, he's going to see a hand specialist in Phoenix, but talking to those guys and talking to Francona, it sounds like the hand specialist is not likely to say anything different than what they already know, and that is it's going to be a pain tolerance thing. And it's something Steve-O referenced the fact that, Votto played with something like this towards the end of his career, but Joey Votto isn't catching every day. You heard him reference 150 pitches in a game. Catching makes this injury different. Catching makes this more difficult for him to come back. So we don't know the timeline yet, but if you assume that he's going to miss at least a chunk of time, how do you read the Reds roster and the Reds lineup with Stephenson out?
Well, we keep talking about things being very fluid with this lineup, and there were stretches where Stephenson was this team's cleanup guy. There were stretches where he's had more of a hot and cold volatile season. Like his strikeouts are up. There have been cold stretches, but he's also then had those hot spurts where he's done more damage. It hasn't been like a Tyler Stephenson-y type year, but the hot stretches have come at meaningful points. And like specifics are coming to mind, like Detroit's one example. I remember interviewing Stephenson several times this year to talk about the big hit, the big drive, the big line drive, the power swing. He's had those moments, and again, those have been rewarded with him moving up to the cleanup spot at specific points when the bat's been going well. And as steady as Jose Trevino's been, that's not been Jose's game and Jose's role in the team this year. So it's another loss. It's a loss they're better handled to withstand because of what Hayes is doing against left-handed pitching and because of what Andujar is doing against left-handed pitching. But then when you look into the Will Banfield of this all, and the starts that he's going to be making, it's a loss, and it's a reminder that you never quite know what it's going to be at this point of the year. Because if you were talking about like 2 weeks ago, what are concerns? Like unexpected stuff comes up in September and August, and we're at that stage.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about Trevino in a bit because Terry Francona had a lot to say about Jose Trevino. But first, the roster move just to have another catcher at the big league level is Will Banfield. And so Banfield comes up, and his reputation is obviously as a defensive catcher and not much of an offensive threat. And this will be his big league debut whenever it is that he does spell Jose Trevino, likely on this road trip. But I was a little bit surprised when Terry Francona was talking about Banfield the first day he came up. He said, look, he's a guy who can catch it and throw it. And he said he's probably the best thrower in our organization. And so they think that highly of him defensively, but it's a big jump for him to step in and fill in for Tyler Stephenson, however long this ends up being.
Banfield, I just saw him in the spring, and I saw him catch that Chase Burns AAA start. He's an athlete. Like, he's a real athlete. Obviously, he's bounced around multiple teams. The bat hasn't quite come along. But he looks like a guy with the draft pedigree that he had. And there was just a comfort and a reliability that I felt with him working with Chase Burns on that day in Louisville. So, and also, I mean, he was competing with Austin Wynns for a spot on the opening day roster after Stephenson had the oblique injury. So again, like, it's a 25-year-old who hasn't played in the big leagues, who's bounced around multiple teams. It is what it is. He is more of a tools guy over like what's an example? Like an Austin Romine, just low ceiling, just hopefully can kind of get you through it for the rest of the year. Like, he's not that. He very much is more of a young tools guy. And then I was satisfied with what I saw with him working with the pitchers. And then also in spring training, he had some monster blasts. So maybe he just tries to sell out for some of that at the plate. And if he can swing a game or two like Austin Wynns did, that'd be a win. But certainly a notable blow to the depth chart, kind of with the replacement to the replacement.
Some of the scouting report stuff on Banfield throughout his career mentions leadership quality, lending itself to handling a pitching staff. You know, you'll see on that. Jose Trevino was very excited. Apparently, he and Banfield developed a little bit of a relationship. And Terry Francona said that Trevino mentioned that Banfield is like his son and that they spent an hour talking when Banfield showed up. So that can only help if that's the case for those two. But catching right now, listen, Trevino's been doing it, and we're going to get to the workload for Trevino coming up in just a bit.
I got one more thing here. Yes, like, let's see what Banfield can do. I'm very interested, but again, he's a minor league 25-year-old, not journeyman because he's too young to be a journeyman, but he's bounced around. To go into the weeds, the organizational catching depth chart from a prospect perspective has always been an issue. You look at the Matt Nelson pick not panning out. You look at, I think Logan Tanner hasn't quite panned out. He's battled injuries. I believe he's hurt right now. There was some hope for Michael Troutwine at one point. His bat never came around. He's also hurt right now. Alfredo Duno is great. We'll be talking about him for years, but he's also 19. He's forever away. There's not another catching prospect between low A and the majors. So that rears its head now when you don't have the Hector Rodriguez of catchers, or even the, the Will Benson of catchers per se on the organizational depth chart, or the I know he didn't pan out, but like the Stuart Fairchild of catchers. Like, you don't have that guy in your depth chart right now. So it's now someone you bring in from the outside at the start of the season.
As the Reds started this road trip in Orange County, and in the second game of that series, in which the Reds won the game, clinched the series, I couldn't help but think, here we are, Southern California, and the stars are out. And by that, I mean that second game felt like the Reds flexing a little bit of star power. Now, all of this comes with the disclaimer that the Angels are a disaster, that they're a disaster defensively. They strike out a lot against anybody. But Hunter Greene, in just his second start back, punched out 12 and pitched with an edge that we didn't see maybe in his first game back from the injured list, pitched with a real edge that you could see. And then Elly De La Cruz had the two plays that were assisted by some poor defense in the outfield, but scoring from first on a single to left field. Elly De La Cruz did that twice. As the Reds head down the stretch and they see the Dodgers, they see the Padres, they see the Mets, can the Reds ride some star power competing against some of those star-studded, heavy star baseball teams that they're chasing?
That's the path, especially when you look at how tough the schedule is going to be after this Diamondback series. That's the path for a Reds team who's using its entire 26-man roster right now. And we saw guys on the bench, Benson, Espinal. We saw Luis May and Connor Phillips. Like, we're seeing this whole roster right now in big spots. We saw each of those guys in a big spot in LA, and, we'll see with those guys. But ultimately, to lessen the impact of that thin margin for error, your stars overcome that. Your stars supersede that. Overall, I feel optimistically. I think Ellie's going to get hot. I think Ellie's fine. And I am feeling really good about Hunter, about Marte, about Friedel, who I think is one of the stars on this team. You are seeing it, and you're seeing in these big games those types of performances mattering. None of these guys are MVPs. You're seeing these performances mattering in the way that MVP style performances do when you get to this stage of the season.
I made this observation during the game as Hunter Greene's pitching to Zach Neto, which Zach Neto is a different story. If you look at numbers side by side, Zach Neto and Ellie De La Cruz, I was shocked to see how comparable they are at this point of his career. Yeah, good player. Hunter Greene is facing Zach Neto the second time in that game. Zach Neto swings through 99 chest high heater from Greene, steps out of the box, calls his timeout. And as he did, the television broadcast, this wasn't on the monitor, but I was just watching Greene on the mound. And when Neto stepped out after strike 2, Greene stayed in front of the rubber, both arms dangling by his side, and just kind of rocked back and forth and stared at home plate. I don't know exactly where the eye contact was, but he just stared. And then he got back on the mound, and the next pitch was the slider at 91. And I made the observation to the people I was sitting with. I said, that looked like a fighter after a knockdown when somebody's taking a standing 8 count and he's just waiting to go finish the job. And he finished the job with the slider, and that kind of had that entire feel to it for Hunter Greene to me for that entire game. He just felt like he was out there to dominate, and he kind of showed it at times a little bit more than he did. And if the games get bigger and the stakes get higher and Greene pitches the way that he's capable of, and maybe even pitches to a degree that we haven't seen before, I like seeing my guy out there with some swagger on the mound, doing some of the things that Greene did in that game.
I mean, that's it. That's the thing. That's the story. It's not what's become the story of Greene season, but it was what was supposed to be the story of Greene season, which is what's even the lights are really on. Like, what is Greene in the moment on the stage, puffing his chest out? I think a part of it was a little deliberate to like letting himself get there because of what that can do for his confidence. I bet it can do something for the team's confidence, and what it can do to maybe make up for some of the time that he missed. Is there an intangible quality of him trying to go above and beyond to show how much this matters to him? Like, there's a lot on Hunter's mind right now, and I'm interested to talk more to him about that, and I hope we hear from that on the next show. But to see him be I even think in his first initial comments in his press conference coming back from the IL, I think there's a transparency there in terms of how he's feeling and where he's at right now, just from a headspace perspective. And I think you saw that translate in LA.
While we're talking about star power, you mentioned these names, but I wanted just to add a little emphasis to it. Andrew Abbott is a star when he takes the mound right now. He's in control when he takes the mound. I don't think teams want to see Andrew Abbott right now. And the emerging star on a more regular basis of Noelvi Marte. Right now, Marte is as hot and as confident at the plate as anybody probably. I mean, I can think of a few other times this season where guys got hot, but Marte has that look, and Marte also has the eye test kind of a look that you just love watching him swing and do what he's doing when he's hitting the way he is right now.
You know what I love? I love that he's just taking his hits the other way. And I've always believed that with Noelvi, when he has that opposite field mentality, that things just simplify for him, and he just kind of gets caught up less in the cat and mouse game, and he just has that switch he can flip. It's funny, we were talking about Stephenson earlier. Like, it's almost like he has that Stephenson golf club of just the nice single the other way when he gets that certain pitch. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, he can just blast a ball through the middle of the field, opposite field, over the fence as well. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that he can do. You're seeing the game calm down for him. You're seeing, like, I really feel it slowing down for him offensively. The defense still not perfect, but he's 23, and it's a good, meaningful spot and a critical role that a 23-year-old succeeding in right now.
All right, let's do Tito's take now. And I promised we would circle back to Jose Trevino. That's what we're going to do right now, because I asked Terry Francona about Trevino as the Stephenson injury thing started to come into focus some. And I said, you know, what about his value? We saw it earlier in the season when Stephenson was out, and you see it now, but it has a little bit of a different feel to it because Trevino's now been around this team through spring training and into the late season games. And I think without question has become even more of a leader. And what Francona said about it, first off, just physically, while Stephenson initially dealt with the thumb, Trevino caught one of the extra inning games against Milwaukee, the 11 inning game, and then turned around and caught the day game after an 11 inning night game, and then caught all 3 games of the Anaheim series. And Tito said this, he said, look, that's not easy to do. People who don't watch baseball or aren't around baseball might think that that's no big deal. He said, that's not easy. The only reason Jose Trevino can do that is because he works his tail off. So he admires that. But he also added along the leadership line, he said, it's also not easy for a guy who's not an everyday player to carry a certain leadership role and carry a certain weight that Jose Trevino does with this team, and not just with the pitching staff, with the position players and the entire clubhouse. And he told a story about Nick Krall, and he said back to, I think one of the winter meetings at some point when they were together in a hotel at that point of the offseason, he said Krall, he looked across and Krall was just mad. He was upset. He was mad, not happy with what was going on. And Tito said, what's going on? He said, I feel like I'm not able to get the catcher that we need, the backup catcher. He felt like he wasn't able to get it done. Whatever he was pursuing at the time, it wasn't working out. It hadn't happened yet. And then they eventually make the move that lands them Jose Trevino from the Yankees. And Francona just was reflecting on that, given where the Reds are right now and the importance and the value of Trevino to this team of, hey, the front office was fighting for this. The front office wanted a guy who would be more than just a backup that you stick in there for wallpaper when Tyler Stephenson needs a rest. They wanted someone who would contribute in a lot of different ways. They've gotten that and then some from Jose Trevino.
He's not an all-star. He's one of the 30 best catchers in baseball. I think the best way to describe this backup catcher stuff, I don't have the numbers in front of me. Off the top of my head, the Reds were something like 17-37 in games that Tyler Stephenson didn't play last season. Again, I might be off there, but it was something like that. It was something absolutely ridiculous. How often, and this is nothing against Luke Maile, but how often the Reds were losing in games that Stephenson wasn't starting. And when you look at why you lose and when you lose and who's playing, you can understand easily why the Reds were as determined as they were to make backup catcher as much of a priority as it was. And I remember some of those conversations. I remember Higashioka signed some massive deal at the winter meetings for a backup catcher. And the Reds, as you might know, have limited payroll flexibility. And it's like, how the heck are they going to pull this one off? Are they going to be in a worse spot at backup catcher than they were last year? The market was already thin, and the Jose Trevino move was creative. I know Cruz had a good season before he got hurt, Fernando Cruz, but I was kind of the low man on Fernando Cruz entering this season just because I thought he had been overused and was about to run out of gas. I felt positively about the move at the time. It's aged very well. He is more than keeping the Reds afloat. Jose Trevino is, and it's been one of those successful wins on the margins.
Last part of Tito's take is an update on Nick Lodolo. And Nick Lodolo has, from the start, also like the Stephenson injury. I get it. It's not the same injury. It's apples and oranges here, but there was the same tone about the injury in that when Lodolo had the blister, everybody's been very positive and optimistic about the fact that as soon as he's ready, he'll be back, but you never know. And every time on the television side, every time we shoot one of his bullpens or he's throwing on the side, you can see him. He's looking down at that. He's feeling on that finger. And as you've pointed out before, if he can spin that certain breaking ball the way that he needs to, and he's still looking at it. I talked to him again in Anaheim, and everything's going great. No problems. Everything's checking all the boxes every time he goes out there. And there's one final box to check, and that's going to come on Friday when the Reds, before they open that series against the Diamondbacks, Lodolo's going to throw to hitters. And if that goes well, Terry Francona said, you can assume that the next step would be for him to start the final game of the road trip on Wednesday against the Dodgers at Dodger Stadium. That's if everything goes perfectly well, which it rarely does. But the Reds and Nick Lodolo are hopeful that's the case. And then we can circle back to the star power game. I had someone tell me this weekend, in terms of the Reds starters, and you've probably heard this before, a lot of people like Nick Lodolo as having the highest upside of the entire group, and that's no slight on anyone else. That's just how highly a lot of people think of Nick Lodolo.
Man, I'm going to be watching that breaking ball so close on Friday. That's just so important. I don't want to cast a negative slant on this, especially because Lodolo will tell you, and he'll go in depth on this, what he learned from the blister issue in 21, what he learned from the blister issue in 2024. But in both those years, he kind of overcompensated. There was some other stuff that popped up. Last year, it was the sprained finger that ended his season. And in general, too, when he returned, he just wasn't spinning that breaking ball as well as he possibly could. It impacted his two-strike approach. Earlier this year, when we were struggling, when Lodolo was struggling, we were talking about, well, that breaking ball is just not quite spinning yet, and that's the next step for him. And we told the story about that progression. Will he have to go on that progression again? Is he already there? This is the difference between whether or not he's going to return and be an ace or return and be a mid-rotation guy. Like, huge storyline to follow is that breaking ball and the blister and how that works together.
Going to jump into Charlie's notebook right now, and I'm looking for. I want to know what you think about this, because it did strike me in the Anaheim series. The Reds won Game 1 of the series against the Angels without any of their top three back-end guys pitching. And it wasn't a one-run game, but it wasn't a blowout either. And they won that game with no Graham Ashcraft, no Tony Santillan, no Emilio Pagan to finish it off. They won the second game in Anaheim without Emilio Pagan. So they won a series, won 2 games. Close games, like we said, especially the second one, with no Emilio Pagan. He wasn't going to pitch those 2 days. Terry Francona thought he needed a break. When you look at appearances and you look at track record and who the Reds' back-end guys are right now, how closely are you watching how Terry Francona manages bullpen usage and, dare we say, load management for those guys at this point in the season?
It's absolutely fascinating. And I'm not criticizing any moves at all, but like there were stretches in like July where it's like Pagan got 3 straight saves and Tony also pitched on 3 straight days. I was like, well, all right, they're doing this. Like, it's funny. Like, we talked about this at one point this season. Like, anytime someone gets 3 straight saves and 3 straight days, automatic story.
They get a story.
That happened too much this year for me to do it every time, because it would have just been a repeat of the story that we wrote or same with Santi, and it wasn't quite saves, but this stuff was happening pretty regularly. Like the Scott Barlow 6 outings and 8 appearances and the 6 appearances in 8 games,
right,
and 6th one being multiple innings. Like, we saw this stuff happening, and it was a part of the win every game mentality. And now it's catching up to the Reds, and now as a result, the bullpen depth is in the spotlight more than it has all season. And in a nutshell, all you need to know is that Luis May went from pitching the 8th inning twice back-to-back days to being optioned a little. So there's a lot also that's happened around it, which is, all right, Martinez was supposed to be in the bullpen, but then the starters got hurt. Chase Burns was supposed to be in the bullpen, but he got hurt. We'll see how these moving pieces sort out and who replaces May. But something we've talked about on this show consistently was, at this point of the year, the expectation was that multiple of Phillips, May, Richardson, Maxwell, maybe even Zulueto, La Sorsa, multiple of those guys would be ready, would have their breakout, burst onto the scene, kind of like Tony Santillan had last year, for example. And here we are, and it's late August, and none of those guys is in the upper echelon of the high leverage relief pecking order at this stage. So that leads to a bullpen that feels a little thin in the middle, and how they work through this while keeping their back guys fresh. I mean, there's going to be creativity. They're going to have to test some guys, challenge some guys like they challenged May over the last week. Like, it's a fascinating story just in terms of management coming from Terry Francona and the pitching coaches.
You're right. There's going to have to be creativity, and they are going to have to challenge some guys. That entire equation gets a little bit easier if the starters continue to throw 6 and 7 innings a night, which for the most part, I think you can expect 6 most nights. Not every night, it doesn't happen, but you can expect 6 most nights from this group. But here's just some numbers. We know Pagan has a career high in saves right now, and he's pitched a ton. Tony Santillan, as of Wednesday night, is the leader across baseball in appearances this season. Leads everyone. No one has pitched more often than Tony Santillan. And I go back to this note about Scott Barlow that's in the Reds game notes, and I read it and I went, what? Since the start of the 2019 season, Scott Barlow leads all big league relievers in innings pitched and appearances. Does that not?
I believe Taylor Rogers is up there on that list. Fun fact.
Oh, well,
But
you have to
yes.
bring Taylor Rogers into it, don't you? Let's just appreciate the Scott Barlow numbers.
Scott Barlow is such an enigma. Like, you look at him, he's just not at all what you think he is. Like, he is like TJ Antone, Lucas Sims from 2021 is kind of like a comp. Like, I'm just looking at his underlying metrics now. Unbelievable strikeout rate, unbelievable whiff rate, one of the worst walk rates in baseball. He's not, again, you just expect him to be kind of like the right-handed Brent Suter, but he's not. And even though he doesn't throw hard, he's, again, just not at all what he looks like. He's a fireman who gets you out of a jam.
Right.
But there is that inconsistency there. And I think that walk stuff is a reason why he hasn't planted his flag as the 7th inning guy. That's still been Graham Ashcraft. And I bet the walks, has he allowed homers? I guess he hasn't allowed a super high barrel rate. So he's a good barrel rate. So less so that. But definitely the walks are a reason that's probably prevented him from taking that next step. But he's kind of there in the middle. Sam Mull's kind of there in the middle, kind of floating around, not jumping into that high leverage tier. Ashcraft's come down a bit. You'd like him to kind of re-solidify his status there. Really interesting part of the roster right now.
Scott Barlow got his first save as a Red against the Angels in one of those games.
One more thing, to me, that's an Emilio Pagan stat more than anything. The fact that of all the days where there had been all the saves, I believe Tony got a couple early in the year, but after that, it had been just Pagan. When Barlow got that again, to me, that was a Pagan stat more than anything else.
Yeah. Santillan has 4 now because he got one against the Angels as well. Barlow got his, and it was a 4-out save. He faced 5 batters, struck out 4 of them. And I wanted to ask you, did you see his K-strut off the mound? Did you see him strike his?
No.
Oh,
but good for him.
It was a good one, but it was after the last out of the 8th inning. And I talked to him about it, and he said, it just happened. I didn't mean for it to happen. And as soon as I did it, I realized I probably had to go back out for the 9th. So I thought I wished maybe it hadn't happened. But it was good, and he looked good. And again, finished that game off in Anaheim against the Angels. Had to reach for the bell, but I found it. I want to finish by doing some comments. And when Paul was on, as you were out in the Hamptons,
on the Hamptons,
I believe.
Yeah.
Mimosas and
Tahiti,
lobster.
actually.
Oh, okay, that's good. Well, I have a new visual now of Chaz in Tahiti. While that was happening, Paul shared some fantastic news that Power Stacks is now listened and or viewed in all 50 states. South Dakota was a holdout. We finally nailed down South Dakota. So we got all 50 states. That's exciting. And man, we want to say a big thank you to everyone listening and watching for that. And we've gotten great feedback lately, and people have used the email address. People have used the comments on the YouTube channel to express some things. We love that. So if you want to do that on the YouTube channel, leave comments. If you want to do it on the podcast, or if you want to just email us, powerstackspod@gmail.com. At the ballpark. And then also to follow up, I heard from our friends Wayne and Janine in Alabama. They listened on their drive home from Great American Ballpark. We love that. As we search for something to label or associate the Power Stacks community, Nick in Richmond, Virginia, thinks that we should go with the Stack Pack for listeners or viewers. I think maybe I thought Stacks Pack. We'll consider that. We'll put that on the table and put that under consideration. That's from Nick in Richmond, Virginia. And then some of the originals, some of the OGs of power stacks in the community that we have. Marissa and Chris, remember, Marissa was she was listening while she was doing the Red Legs run. She's had a great summer. She and Chris were in Cincinnati. Now they're back in California. Follow the Reds the entire way. They eat up some power stacks on their drives and long drives and in their travels. And so we just want to say a big thank you to the entire community, the Stacks Pack maybe, for helping us grow and helping us do this the way we've done it. And here's hoping that the Reds stay in it, stay relevant, and keep this conversation exciting and interesting and relevant the final 6 weeks of the season.
When you mentioned South Dakota, there was a Fairly Odd Parents reference I was going to make, but I don't think you'd be interested. I don't think you'd get the bit. So I'll just leave that one to the listeners at home.
I wouldn't get it, but going back to South Dakota, it was we heard also from someone in Rapid City, South Dakota, a loyal YouTube watcher in Rapid City, South Dakota. So we love it. Spread the word, spread the love. We'll say that. Spread the love, and we'll spread more power stacks your way as much as we can. For producer Kent and for Chaz, welcome back. Reds have a big, big weekend, and then to finish this road trip out west, keep it right here with us, and we'll keep you posted on everything good and on a need-to-know basis about your Cincinnati Reds. Thanks for watching and listening. Take care.